Om Agnir Murtichakshusi Chandrasuryo Vishaha Shrotrivak Vivritasha Vedaha Vayu Prana Hridaya Vishvamashva Padbayam Prativihi Sarvabhutantaratmam Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Verily, that one Supreme Being is the indwelling consciousness in all beings and all things. Fire is its head, the sun and moon its two eyes. The revelation of Scripture is its cosmic mind. The universe is its heart, its arms and legs the four directions. Music is its voice, the wind is its breath, and from its feet the earth has originated. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Vedanta Siddhanta Nirukti Resha Brahmaiva Jivaham Sakalam Jagatcha Akhanda Rupa Stiti Reva Moksho Brahmadvitiye Shrutayaha Pramanam. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. It is the apt and final conclusion of the Vedanta that all is Brahman. Time, space, living beings, and the world. Living in constant recognition of this fact is what is called enlightenment. Brahman is pure and perfect, and one without a second. And the revealed scriptures are the sure and certain proof of this fact. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Saviryam Karvavahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking consciousness. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. Salutations to all beings, and particularly to those who have gathered here, and to those of us who are live streaming right now with us from various parts of the world. We welcome you all to what must be, I think, our fifth and final class of this particular series, a class that's been given on the similarities and differences between Vedanta and Tantra. Those two great streams have been flowing from time out of mind, philosophically and spiritually and religiously speaking, in India, Mother India, and always commingling their waters and then coming apart and flowing in their own directions and coming back together throughout countless millennia. And so that it becomes difficult to distinguish the Tantric from the Vedantic. And you say, well, why bother? It's a combination of devotion and wisdom, if you want to put it that way, or as we've been describing it lately in more contemporary language for our times, Upasana Dhyan and Tattva Gyan. Dhyan is meditation, so Upasana, you're meditating on deities. I guess whether you know it or not, they say, there are deities for everything. Probably people are praying most often to the deity of money right now. If you can divinize it, if you can deify it, then that's a good thing. That is, consider it to be Lakshmi, as we say, the goddess of the of wealth and so forth. But if you're not aware of the deity and money, the energy of money and so forth, then it can get out of hand, as we can see in so many cases, individually, collectively, even cosmically in the realm of the gods. The gods and goddesses are very much in pursuit of abundance of followers and so forth. So there's a deity to everything, and that's Upasana Jnana. And then on the other side of that, which we would not want to separate from it, but just to show maybe a different approach, is Tattva Gyan. Tattva means a principle, like truth or compassion or love or wisdom, those kinds of principles that are eternal, according to India. And Gyan means wisdom. So they're wisdom principles. They're things that are underlying foundations of everything that the human being would be good to espy, that is, ferret out from hiding behind the curtains of Maya, curtains of nescience, and bring forward and then attain Tattva Gyan, or meditation upon wisdom principles, that is, with your mind, with your eye made single, as Christ said. Wisdom principles then and deities come together. Probably some of the best proving grounds and sharing grounds for Vedanta and Tantra would be the word, Om. That's found in both of those traditions. Or mantra. That's very important to both the traditions. You look at mantra and you say, oh, is it Vedic? Well, yes, look at all the slokas, look at all of the scriptures, look at all of the rites and rituals they practiced in ancient India, more than you can shake a stick at, as my granny used to say. And then you look at the other side and you see these host of deities and that you would pray to, or maybe better leave the realm of Christendom and say, not just pray to them, but make offerings to them, sacrifice to them, and acknowledge them. You need friends in high places, and these deities are back inside of you in your higher consciousness. So if you can make a nice amalgam of these two streams, or better yet, see them as one to begin with, and then begin to inspect them, as we were doing in this last series of 5 classes, then you'll know how well-placed devotion is, or where wisdom needs to come in, where your ignorance is and needs to be destroyed by wisdom. It's the best destroyer, according to Krishna in the Gita. Nahi gyanena sadrishyam pavitram iha vidyate, he says to Arjuna on the battlefield. Wisdom is the greatest purifier in the worlds, in all the worlds. He's talking about the 7 worlds, or the 3 worlds, if you want to put it in a different system, tantric and Vedantic. So you use wisdom to get rid of ignorance, and then you know what love is. That's kind of the idea. So this is why the gurus and the acharyas and the saints and seers are so enamored of wisdom. Love is almost a given, but wisdom is a purifier, so that makes everything much clearer. That's the word, clarity. We want clarity, or in Buddhist and Vedantic schools they use that word khyati. I mean, there's another beautiful hybrid, Buddhism and Vedanta. We never really considered the two different, because Lord Buddha was an Indian man. So we look at these traditions, these darshanas, these clear ways of seeing in India, and we see that they all come from this one very ancient, timeless, if you will, subcontinent called Bharat in the old ages, and eventually began to call it India because of the Indus River that ran through, the most ancient river and sacred river. And then they started calling the people who lived along it Hindus, see, India. So all of that was a later evolution. But in the beginning it was Bharata, and Bharata means the eternal land that has the eternal truth. Sanatana Dharma, the ancient Dharma, the timeless Dharma. So when you look at that and inspect that Dharma, you'll find out it's got equal portions of ancient Samkhya Yoga, or Lord Kapila, who talked about the 24 cosmic principles, all divided into 5s. 5 senses, 5 elements, 5 subtle senses, 5 pranas. You can go on. As even 5s outside of the traditional list of Samkhya come forward to inform you. And then, along with Tantra, you find there are other darshanas that were sharing the field and that played off of Samkhya, like yoga, for instance. When we say yoga, we mean 8-limbed yoga, not just the Hatha yoga and its rage that's going on right now, the physical yoga, but a real, complete and comprehensive yoga that's 8-limbed, that was founded, if you will, or probably better to say systematized by Patanjali, Father. And so yoga had its contribution, and Vedanta was there with Vedavyas, and Buddhism was there with Shakyamuni, and so many beautiful systems, so that if we have to explain India, we have to say, oh, not just one prophet and one holy book, like in most cases with world religions, but dozens and hundreds of each. This is Mother India, and why she's called the mother of all religions, not without no good reason, see. So we're very impressed down here, we can tell you, about this beautiful Mother India. And while we're speaking of Mother India, let's just go on to say Mother herself, because if you're talking about deities, Upashnajan, then there's a mother of all gods and goddesses. And Sri Ramakrishna called her Kali. And in ancient Vedic times she was called Saraswati or Umavati. One of the very most ancient words for Divine Mother, if not the most ancient, is found in the Rig Veda, very early on, probably good 5,000 or 10,000 years BC. And they called her Himavati, the mother of the beautiful snow mountains, Shiva's consort. So there you find it in the Vedas, but yet it's a tantric reference, you see. If she's the daughter of Shiva, then it must have something to do with Shaivism. So Shaivism must have something to do also, though it's seen as a tantric path based on the Tantras, so is Divine Mother, the Shaiva, the Shakta path, and so is Vaishnavism, the Vaishnavas. You're looking at the tantric side of India there, the worship of deities. And then you see the Vedasists, even though, and later on the Vedanta evolved out of Vedic or Vedas into the Upanishads. That's where the non-duality started to come forth, and that was based more on Tattvagyan, on study of wisdom principles, eternal verities that are existing. And we should say existing back inside of you, kingdoms of heaven are within you. And science may have clarified some things out there for us, but it can never clarify what's inside of us. That is going to take a whole different regimen of philosophy, religion, and science, yes, but it's going to have to be yogic science. It's going to have to be Eastern psychology that informs us of the kingdoms of heaven within, or all the chambers that exist in my Father's mansion. There's cryptic references everywhere, even in Christendom. So in order to clarify that, then we meet here so far 5 times in the last 5 weeks on Sundays to look into the Vedic and Tantric streams. And last week it took us into the Kundalini Yoga system, which I showed that chart, lokas, nadis, and transmigration of souls. Because beings as recent as Dalai Lama have told us that in order to solve our emotional problems, which are very big in the West right now, or our problems mentally, or our problems psychologically, or our problems religiously and philosophically, that we're going to have to look into, well, let's put it this way, we're going to have to look outside the box of a one-lifetime scenario and get with the scheme of things that the ancients have known all along, back as far as the Kundalini Yoga systems and the Vedas and so forth. One of the Upanishads is even named after Kundalini Yoga. So we find out there, again, deep, deep connection, inseparable connection between Vedanta and Tantra. So we looked into Kundalini Yoga last time, and we saw that inside of, as the Upanishads again say themselves, inside of the heart there's 100,000 nadis leading there, nerves, but they're not nerves that you can dissect. The outer nerves actually mimic the inner nerves. See, everything came from inside out. not from a big bang inward or from a big bang further out, but from inside out. Everything came from consciousness. Although consciousness cannot be the source of anything, it's an underlying substratum that never breaks into form. That's back to the non-dual side of things. Nevertheless, this appearance of name and form in time and space on top of this ocean, like waves on top of our Pacific Ocean out there, by the millions rising and falling, yet consisting of nothing other than the essence of water, no matter whether they take a form called a wave or whether they merge back into the ocean itself, is telling us that very thing. And so we are traveling along these subtle nerve endings at the time of our passing. But that would be a sort of secondary way of looking at it. We're actually, while we're in the body, still traveling along all of these subtle nerve channels, aren't we? When we go to dream tonight, we're dreaming up worlds and we're fashioning them with creatures of our design. And the 5 elements are there, the 5 senses are there, but they're not in their external state anymore. You have eyes that see inside and ears that hear inside, and you can smell in a dream and touch in a dream and so forth. So you have a whole realm of subtle senses inside of you and subtle objects that you're playing with, sort of like a child playing with sandcastle on the beach. He has as much fun putting it together as watching the ocean destroy it later. So we are creating, preserving, destroying worlds of name and form and time and space all the time. It's just that name, form, time, and space are all shifting. They're varying in degrees of intensity, or if you want to put it that way, in levels of vibration. Science could understand that everything's vibrating at a grosser or denser or a subtler level. And it gets subtler as you go within to the kingdoms of heaven. The worlds get subtler, your consciousness gets subtler. These nerves, that energy, prana, is flowing along, gets subtler so that you can't see them anymore or dissect them. Nonetheless, hundreds and thousands of souls are traveling in and out of those nerves, and some nerves are connected here to the gut, where the ancestors are and where the fetus is formed, and in and out they pass in transmigration form. That is, if you go to your ancestors, then you're coming back to this world. The ancestors are attached to this world. You're in a family line. Buddha wanted out of that. He wanted to strike those fetters, snap those chains, destroy those nidanas, those 12, those links in Buddhism. He talks about. Well, I went to probably one of maybe 2 or 3 I've ever gone to in my life, funeral service last week for a neighbor who had passed away. I was invited, so I went. And on all the descriptions I heard of this soul who had left the body just a few days earlier, she was going to her ancestors. She had visions of her ancestors at the end. So she will probably then, just like passing into a dream world, will use these nerve passageways, and her transmigrating soul, which is basically her mental complex, will move to the realm of the ancestors, which is moving inside to sort of a dream world, and there we'll experience that kind of bliss with the ancestors, and then probably will all of a sudden feel the pull, the gravitation of returning to the physical form to complete some unfinished business. We call it karma. Some unresolved impressions or desires in our mind. I mean, basically that's what, if we want to go to the tantric element of things, that's what you see here when you look at the 9 levels of desire. 9 ways of dealing with desire, but what I'm really talking about here is these wheels. You see these wheels? 4 wheels, basically, 2 inside of 2. That's how Maya operates. One wheel's going this way and one wheel's going this way, you see, like that, constantly. And that's how people find it so difficult to get off of the wheel of Maya, or out of the ocean of samsara, as Buddha put it. Because the inner wheel here, you can see, if you enter into it, is basically, the outer wheel is one that is moving in this direction, as you can see. And it basically begins with birth and ignorance, there at the top. Ignorance of what? Ignorance of your true soul, as being birthless, ironically enough. If you're born and you can't say to yourself, I was never born, then you're ignorant of the true nature of things. Birth itself is ignorance. That is, if you fall victim to it, that's why the great ones sing. Namrichor na shanka, name jati beda, pita naiva me naiva, mata manjanmaha. Aham, and so forth and so forth. And it goes on singing. Chidananda Rupaha Shivoham Shivoham Om. So what does it mean? It means Namrityur, no death have I. Why? Because Name Jati Beta, because I never had a birth. Pita Naiva, I have no father. Mata Majanmaha, I never had a mother who gave me birth. Janma means birth, Mata means mother. So what about those beings who have realized Ajati Vada, the path of those who are birthless? It's a path in India. It's called the path Ajati, no birth, Vada, path. If they're born into the body, the first thing they'll do when they see this pressing in on them all around, this Maya, this samsara pressing in on them all around, is find their way quickly to their teachers. Call up all the wisdom, the tattva gyan that they meditated on and studied in their past lifetime, and fuse it together with the deities and find their path. Maybe a Shaivite studying the Shaivite scriptures, could be a Vaishnava studying the Bhagavad Gita, could be a Shakta studying the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam, the great mother scripture of the world. Whatever the case may be, they'll find their path and they'll find their teaching, and they'll beat a hasty retreat out of Maya before it gets a hold of them. That's an illumined soul, that's a Jivan Mukta, that's a past master. So, why else do you think Christ's parents found him on the steps of the temple and said, "Where did you go? You disappeared." He said, "Where else would I go? I must be about my Father's business." In other words, am I your son? Are you my father? Are you my mother? Was I born? Am I going to die on the cross? No. They say that Christ on the cross lost his faith. Some people say, says, "Oh Lord, why have you forsaken me?" But the real truth of the matter is that's one of the most famous hymns of the time in the hymnals. It's named, "O Lord, why have you forsaken me?" So he was singing on the cross during the time of his transfiguration, or his passing, and then his transfiguration. He was singing that beautiful hymn, "O Lord, why have you forsaken me?" to show everyone how he was dying consciously. Basically, dying consciously means realizing that he was never born in the first place, that this was all dreamlike. Isn't it dreamlike? Are the objects real to you still? When science has told you that they're changing at a billionth of a second, do you still look at an object and say, "Oh, that must be real in its own right"? And you're still trying to know it? But Vedanta tells you you cannot know an object because it's not there. Its appearance is there. The Mayic part of the chair, of the room, of the body is there. But you haven't seen the real chair, the real body, the real house yet. That's called the atomic particle chair, the atomic particle house. And if you saw that, you wouldn't attribute solidity to it, like you're doing now. You wouldn't attribute liquidity to the ocean when you look at it like you're doing now, if you saw the real waves of the ocean, waves of particles. But the seers have gone a step further than these scientists, quantum physicists, and they're telling us that there is a essence, a Buddha nature chair, an Atman room, a Brahman ocean. What to speak of the samsara sagara, the ocean of birth and death and ignorance. There's the ocean of Brahman, ocean of Ananda, bliss. So in this helix here, everything starts out in birth of ignorance. And you can see then that it proceeds. And it moves towards growth in selfishness. Then on to life lived in delusion. Then moves on to death in doubt and fear. So this is going on all the time. Maya operates via the movement of simultaneously alternating and counteractive cycles. And that's what's so flummoxing to the human mind about it. Because if you get off of one wheel and say, I'm going to be a good boy now, you see. And you get on this wheel, it's called moral life. How does that start? See? And it goes the other way, and you get birth in heaven, and birth on earth in this case. And then you follow the conventional religion of the time, whatever it might be, because that changes too from century to century. Then you go around and you observe ethics and morals, and you fall into a kind of mundane habitual life, even around your religion, once a week on Sunday, praying over your meals. But actually, that's it. Then you move on to attachment to pleasure, which is what heaven is. Heaven is attachment to pleasure and shunning pain. So the Vedanta says, and my teacher used to say, I don't care for heaven. Vedantist does not want to go to heaven. That's where your ancestors have gone. Inside on these hundreds and thousands of subtle nerves, right to this chakra, represented in the human form, in the marvelous human form by the vortex there. See, at the stomach, level of the stomach, where eating goes and digestion goes and the birth of the fetus goes, and people are passing in and out into the body and leaving the body by the hundreds and thousands all the time, probably 5,000 or 10,000 since I started speaking. So in that cycle then, you want to get off of both of those cycles. It all really applies to the Bur, Buvar, and Svarloka. You recognize those words? You know the Gayatri mantra? Om Bur Bhuva Swaha Tat Savitur Varenyan. Om Bur Bhuva Swaha, the first 3 of 7 worlds. These are the worlds of transmigration. They come back to the physical form, and they go to the heavens, and they come back to the physical form. And somewhere in there is also hell. Because if you can see what I'm saying here, these are not locations in space and time. It's not like we can dig down in the earth and find hell, or go up in the sky and find a man with a beard up there. You see, this is the physical world alone, Burloka. So it's the world of physical objects. If you want to visit these worlds, you're going inside on these subtle nerves, and you're going to cast away your body, and you're going to shut down your senses, just like you do in dream tonight. And if you go deeper than dream into deep sleep, you even destroy those worlds. In deep sleep, there's no form, no name, no children, no money, not even any cell phones, no one to contact. Everyone's in a deep sleep state, which is subtle bliss. So that's why this says worlds of rebirth here. If you penetrate through this, we could call this the Vishnu Granthi. It's a subtle curtain of nescience here between this center and this center. And it's very hard to penetrate it. People who practice meditation, study scripture, who are Advaitahina, they're heading toward the Advaitic or non-dual level of teachings. Those kinds of people are beginning to penetrate through. And it's one of the problems with prayer and worship, is that quite often that's for your ancestors. Have you noticed? I mean, say, take Japan. What are they worshiping? Their ancestors. A great cross-segment of India is worshiping their ancestors. So a lot of worship done for names and forms arrives at that level, and heaven and goes back to earth and comes to heaven. So it's a cycle of humans and ancestors, and animals and insects and trees and plants are all just mixed in there, peppered there with our own mind. You think your baby, came along these nadis, attracted to you, and you attracted to it through these nadis, and formed here and got into the fetus and came out and looked at you. So did animals and insects do the same thing. It just came out of the human mind. It's all generated by the human mind. The mind is the projector of the worlds. Objects are just thought made concretized, as Holy Mother said. Sri Sharda Devi, my teacher's teacher. Objects are just thought made concretized. Thought about that? And we can also dissolve them. We will dissolve them 4 times. Once at death, once in a good meditation, once in deep sleep, and if you're so fortunate, in samadhi or nirvana. You'll break them all down, and you'll see the light behind them, if you want to put it very simply. The light of consciousness. So they want you to, and in that way they want you to renounce all things and find that light. They sing. Vishayam kusumam parihricha sada charanya buruhamrita shanti sudam piba bringamano bhavarogaharam pranamami param jananim jagatam. Renounce my mind to be. Your mind is like zzz, this big black bee usually. Renounce my mind to be the sense flowers of this earth. Drink instead the nectar of Mother's lotus feet. Enjoy thus, in peace and in mirth. Then, in charm of delusion, shalt thou cease to be. You will not be deluded any more. No more life lived in delusion. O great Mother of the worlds, be our salutations ever unto thee. Swami Abhedananda, one of Ramakrishna's disciples, wrote that. So, getting off of this wheel of Maya, this double helix of Maya, you proceed to Mahamaya's realm. Mahamaya is the great Maya, is the great Mother. She also has worlds for you, and there's also wheels operating there. The wheels operating there are called Dharma and Sadhana. In other words, in my way of thinking, in the way of my teachers, we don't want to stop just at vows and precepts, Dharma, live a righteous life, all well and good. But in order to prove to yourself that I and my Father are one, or Tat Tvamasi, that thou art, or Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, in order to prove that, as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva have done, the great Trinity, then you're going to want to practice sadhana. That's the defining characteristic. That's the difference between a class like this and a college course. They're concentrating on 2 different levels of wisdom. One's Paravidya, higher wisdom, and one's Aparavidya, lower wisdom. One's sacred and one's secular. You need both. Your diet has to be expanded to get a good input, a good nourishing input of jnana wisdom, tattva gyan, these principles. And you must be reminded of these all the time. And you must also be reminded that they have come out of you. They're not something you're seeking outside, because that's the downside of the secular wisdom, is it's going to send you seeking out and about for things which you already are and have. In other words, as the father of yoga put it, all knowledge lies within you, or the kingdoms of heaven are within you. So your seeking, your search is there if you're seeking Paravidya, supreme knowledge. Vidya is that word, the same word that the Vedas come from, Ved. It means spiritual wisdom, higher knowledge. So if you get on the dharmic wheel there, as you can see, things usually start off with yearning. That's how Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa put it to people who had come to him in Calcutta in the 1800s and say, "Sir, what is the way?" And it became a famous question all over India, and now has reached the West. "Sir, what is the way?" you ask your teacher. And he usually would say, "Try crying tears for God." That is, you cried jugs of tears for wife and husband and children and money. Try just one sincere tear for God. That's called yearning. And you know you have some yearning for something higher than the passing phenomena of this world, of which you should always be the witness. Sakshi Bhutam. So in that case, then, you're beginning to cry tears of love. They say your mantra that you get from your teacher, say Om Namah Shivaya. That's a very common mantra, so we don't have to give away any secrets when we say it. So say you say that mantra, you must water those seeds with the tears of your own devotion, or else it just becomes like a parrot saying the mantra. Om Namah Shivaya, ah, Om Namah Shivaya, ah. Mixed in with Polywana cracker and other mantras, lower grade mantras. So that's not going to get the parrot anywhere, because when the cat grabs it at the end of its life, it doesn't say the mantra, it just gives its primal squawk and dies. So what you want is a little consciousness brought to that mantra. See? So that's going to be watering that mantra with the tears of devotion, tears of your love. See, isn't that Tantra and Vedanta brought together? People accuse the Vedanta and Buddhism of being too cerebral, too non-dual, too esoteric, too abstruse. People accuse the Tantra of being too sentimental, ending up too much in sentimentalism or in strange rites and rituals, like sitting on a corpse at night in a graveyard to get rid of your fear of decay and death. So they have criticisms about both paths, but what if you were to see the two as one? If you were to identify them and then find the greatest aspects and facets of each and work those into your spiritual life, then you'd have a well-rounded Dharma. In fact, maybe not just Dharma, but Swadharma would be yours. That means your highest destiny. Everyone has some business to do here when they come into the human body from the realm of the ancestors. And don't get me wrong, some people come into the human body from higher centers. You've seen them, I hope, and heard of them. They come from higher centers. Very, very inward, almost non-dual lands. They're called bodhisattvas and jivan muktas, videha muktis, if you can talk them into getting into the body, because videha means free of bodies. Siddhas and munis and sages and seers and avaduts and so forth. There's so many classes of beings that make their way here, and they all have a purpose for it, a conscious purpose. But everyone comes in for some reason. So if you satisfy those basic ends, then you can maybe make your way to the Dharma, and if you can satisfy that, then you'd find the Swadharma, the real purpose for being here on. Sri Ramakrishna said the only purpose for coming to earth is to realize God. There's no other purpose than that, because this is the hardest place to do it. So if you can do it here, you can do it anywhere. To quote a song, which I won't sing because I don't know the chords to it. So this means this is your opportunity. Embodiment is a great opportunity then for realizing the true nature, so that you won't live in delusion, and you won't even live in a conventional religion and sort of waste your time spinning your wheels, pun intended. But that you gravitate to a higher wheel, a subtler wheel called Dharma. So yearning starts it out, then vows and precepts come along. Here's the difference between, because vows and precepts are different than moral laws. For instance, thou shalt not kill, on the level of ethics and morals, and you take it into the Dharma, becomes thou cannot kill. See? Isn't it? And we just say that you're birthless and deathless. Your soul cannot be born. It's not an object, it's not an energy, and it's not a thought. And those are the things that get born and which pass away. But it's a eternal verity. It doesn't change like everything else. It's the one stable thing in you. It's Shiva abiding in you. It's your witness consciousness. Sakshi Chaitanya. They sing about that too in a very beautiful way. They say like, Chaitanya Shashvata Shanto Vyomatita Niranjana Bindu Nada Kalatita Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Deva Maheshvara Gurur Eva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Brahmanandam Parmasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Vandvaititam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvama Shadilaksham Ekam Nicham Vibalamachalam Sarvadi Shakshi Bhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tanamami Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. That's the Guru Stotra. Basically, it starts out the fourth verse I was singing. Chaitanya, that's consciousness, that's your pure consciousness. Chaitanya, and then Shashvataha Shanto, it's Shanti, it's peaceful. Vyomatita Niranjanaha, it's transcendent. And Niranjanaha, it's pure. I mean, they don't mix terms in these songs. They're not throwing you any wooden nickels or talking on secular, worldly, or earthly terms. They're talking about your true nature. The nature of the Guru living inside of you, basically. They're external gurus, but Sri Ramakrishna used to say, when the mind becomes pure, it becomes its own Guru. Then it can guide itself, and it can guide others. So then ends Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara. That's Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. There's your tantric element put into a beautiful Vedantic setting, isn't it? So vows and precepts will take you beyond ethics and morals. It's not good enough just to be a good person and go to heaven, not in the Eastern traditions. You must transcend good. Vivekananda used to say, from good to better to best. Good is moral and ethics. Better, vows and precepts. Best of all, if you can hit the cutting edge with your practice, you can become a practitioner and hold a practice every day. Meditate every day. Study the scriptures every day. Do your devotions every day. Doesn't matter what level your consciousness has attained. You keep it up. Until the mind transcends, Vyomatita, till it transcends everything. Till it's even beyond Bindu, Nada, and Kalatita. You see? Bindu, Nada, Kalatita, which is a chart which I should have started off on, so I didn't throw our camera person a curve, but I was instead attracted in my mind to this desire chart. So let's finish that up. From vows and precepts, you go to dharmic life. And from dharmic life, you get the desire for freedom. Mumukshutvam, it's called. In Vedanta, in order to have mumukshutvam, you must first discriminate between the real and the unreal, then you should detach from the real. Christ called that separating the wheat from the chaff. Then you get samo, dhammo, upariti, titiksha, samadana, shraddha, the 6 jewels in the treasures. 6 jewels are inner peace. Do you have that? Inner peace, self-control, Forbearance of all ills gets a little harder now. Forbearance of all ills, equanimity, that is, the Buddhists would say. And then self-settledness, contentment. It's better. Contentment's better than happiness. Self-settledness. Then you get samadhana, the ability to meditate on God alone, without any distractions. You have separated the wheat from the chaff. You saw the essence. Now I can meditate on it without any distraction. Aren't I fortunate that I'm not called out of my third eye, see, anymore by the ancestors or by lower considerations, even by the devotees. Now I'm poised in my own consciousness, Chaitanya. And then finally you have faith from that. That's called Shraddha. Met an Indian woman the other day called Shradini. Another Shradini. That means faith. Goddess of faith. So that faith is rock solid. That faith is unshaken. That faith is not built on these shifting sand. You know what I mean by that? Changing particles, neutrons, protons, atoms, quarks, molecules, subatomic particles. That faith is not based on those. Birds have nests, foxes have holes. You have no place to lay your head here. Shame on you for getting attached here and gravitating between these three chakras. See? And then having to call out, oh, save me, save me, save me, Lord, save me, Christ, save me, Mother. What a bother you are. Save yourself. You see on the eastern horizon, the avatar, I'm using that in the Sanskrit sense, not in the Hollywood sense. The avatar is not a savior in India. The avatar is an exemplar. And that one distinction shows the difference between conventional religion and higher religion. Right there means that if you have to look for a savior, then you've fallen into weakness. Some form of weakness, some form of dependency, you see. But if you've arrived at the level of sadhana, and you can cut yourself in the divine image, know the truth and the truth shall set you free. Now, if you can't know the truth, then come to me, sure, but come to me for what? To cry on my shoulder? To use me as a doormat? No. Come to me to learn the teachings, because that's Dharma. And that Dharma will save you. It will save you where conventional religion will not, because that's the realm of your ancestors. They have not thought of anything beyond their own pleasure. Exquisite pleasure though it may be, it's still pleasure, and it still is accompanied by pain. You say, when you get to heaven, is it all pleasure and no pain? Yes, until you fall back into earth. You see? So your pleasure is temporary. You're still attached to subtle pleasures. But what about transcendence and the purity of my own soul, my true nature? What about that? Why can't I live there, in that realm of the saints and seers? Oh, when will I be granted the company of Jesus, Buddha, Moses, Gauranga, Chaitanya, and other great souls? You're not saying, when will I go to Christendom, or when will I go to Hinduism, or when will I go to Buddhism? You're saying, all these souls are indigenous to my soul. There is no such thing as a foreign religion. All of these religions are in me. The religions of Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad are one religion. One line. Should have never been separated. But time played havoc with it. And delusion in the human mind played havoc with it. You see the results now. Just go to the Middle East. Take a look. Look at the news. You don't even have to go to the Middle East. It played havoc with it, as time does. That's what Krishna is saying in that picture right there on the wall. From age to age I embody myself forth for the destruction of the old Dharma and for the resurrection of the new Dharma. So if you want to get on the Dharmic wheel, then you take a great teacher like Krishna or Shiva, one of the Trinity. See? And you find an exemplar, not a savior. Exemplar is what's going to really save you. In fact, the Tantras, which we're talking about today, that word means to save. The Tantras were there to save people who couldn't understand the non-dual scriptures yet. Christ knew that, and when he spoke to the common people, he said, "Pray to your Father in heaven." That's dualism. But when he found some of the people who had higher understanding, he said, "I'm the vine, you're the branches. You're connected to me, and through the Son you'll get to the Father." And he was speaking qualified non-dualism, Vishishta Advaita then. But to his own apostles he said, "I and my Father are one. Who do you think that I am? Or who do you say that I am?" Isn't that the Mahavakya of the Christian era? Isn't it like saying, "I am Brahman"? Or "Who am I?" So Christ was appearing before them. You see, who do you say that I am? "Oh Lord, you're the Christ. You're the coming one. You're here. You're here in form. You've taken a form for our sake." See. So these dharmic teachings were handed out to souls of a higher understanding like that. Vedanta is a finishing school. You see thousands of people here listening to me. It was the same with my teacher. A room full of 15 or 30 people at the most. Some worship happened, then you'd have 80. See, but you talk about the truth principles, non-duality, the illusion of death, the unreality of sin, the perfect divine nature that's in you, and the work you have to do to realize it. 2/3 of them ran away. The good news in Vedanta turned sour to them. See, or maybe it's a matter of, I'll get to that later. Still have some business to attain here. Still have some eating, drinking, and sex life to engage in, and family, and appeasing my ancestors. But how long will that go on? From birth to death and death to birth, from cradle to the grave, do you remember who you are? Or do you forget when you're born in the fetus? And has anyone come around to help you remember until this very moment? Until a moment like this, someone come along and say, "Oh, guess what? See, death is an illusion. You're a birthless, deathless, divine verity. You are consciousness itself." And libel of libel, it's the worst sin to call another a sinner. That's how Vivekananda put it to us. It's the worst sin to call another a sinner. You're not inherently sinful, you're inherently divine. That's why birds have nests and foxes have holes, but you don't have a place to lay your head here. It's not that you can't see divinity in cows and plants and nature and so forth, fine, but it's an insentient divinity you're seeing there. You're the thing. You're it. It's the greatest game of cosmic tag, to awaken up to your own divine nature. Without a doubt, and put all doubts and fears away. Doubts, fears, and ignorance all exist right there at that curtain of nescience, that line of demarcation between the worlds of rebirth and the worlds of no more rebirth. And it all begins with you setting your foot on the dharmic path with full commitment and never stopping, never turning back, never even looking back over your shoulder. You shouldn't have to. That was all illusion. See, I can save my ancestors later. I mean, even the airlines have a certain enlightenment to them. You get on the plane and say, put your own mask on first before helping others, right? Mm-hmm. So get your own enlightenment first and then help others. Otherwise you'll make a muck of things, as you're seeing going on out there with conventional religion and so forth. I was sitting at a funeral service the other day and just waiting for the first little bit of glimmer of higher wisdom to be spoken in that church. You see? Is that what religions come to? And it's not just Christianity. I've been in Hindu temples waiting for the same thing. So this double helix of Maya, we need to get off of it. And we need to come to the Dharma. And when we come to the Dharma, we have this chance for this final wheel. What's it called? Sadhana. And it leads to formless transcendence. So you go from birth in the three worlds to worlds of no rebirth. That is, you won't come back to the physical again, but you can still be born in these higher worlds. Jnana, Tapar Loka, Jnana Loka, Brahma Loka. Those are higher worlds, no doubt, with much more substance to them, more consciousness, more light. The word of Om is scintillating there, shining with wisdom. You can see, taste, touch, hear, and smell it in a very real way then, with senses that are not just subtle but causal. You've graduated to a very high level of form, but it's still form. That's why they call it Mahamaya. So cutting edge, the rishis say, and said, and did, exemplars, I will reach the non-dual state. If I have to sit under the bo tree for 49 days, I'll do it. If I have to go to the wilderness for 30 days, I'll do it. If I have to go up in the mountain for 12 days, I'll do it. And then they found their connection with the Supreme Being. So that starts here, you can see, by attaining a path and a guru, getting yourself somebody who can instruct you about the practice you need to do. You can hear the vows and precepts and hang out there for a long time and be a knower. You see, I'm a knower, but now I need to be a practitioner, and I need to know that one thing by which knowing all else is known, which was the greatest question ever asked in the Vedic times. They said, they heard all sorts of questions. Other great beings had come to them and said, you know, I've learned everything about the world, and I've read the scriptures, I know everything about spiritual life, I still feel unsatisfied. There's one thing missing. So the rishis sent them here and there to try and find out that one missing piece that they could plug in, knowledge of Brahman, realization. But one questioner once came amongst them and said, teach me that one thing by knowing all else is known. And the rishis all went, best question we ever heard. Come, sit, you see. Because you cannot get the knowledge of the formless through any other way except holy company. And it's not something that you realize happens to you until all of a sudden it dawns on you. The Atman gives it to you. There's a sloka in the Upanishad. By the Atman, Atman is granted. See, knowledge of the Atman is granted by yourself. But you have to put yourself in that atmosphere and wait in a receptive mode with anticipation. There was a beautiful story. I mentioned Himavat, the mother of the eternal snow mountains. She was born to King Himalaya. And King Himalaya, the king of the mountains, she held her as a child. And when she started to grow, he realized that the Divine Mother had been born to him, Uma. Beautiful songs in India about it. Don't get me started or it'll be all music and no teachings. See? Beautiful songs in India about Uma growing up. And as she grew old enough to speak, then he realized, Divine Mother of the Universe has been born to me. Here's my chance. See? She can grant me anything. So he started naming darshan with every deity. Upasana Dhyan, right? Darshan with every deity. Oh, can I have a vision of Krishna? Give me a vision of Shiva. How about Hanuman? How about Ganapati? I've always wanted to see the elephant-headed god. Can I have audience with death, the god of death, Yama? He had darshan with all of them, and Divine Mother, yes you can, Father. Yes you can, Father. Take that, Father. There's yours, Father. No heavy sadhana to do, you see. His sadhana was already done, and he'd already received the fruit of his sadhana with the Divine Mother born to him and a child. So finally, he had run out of things beings to see, darshan to have. And he finally asked her, "Can you show me formless reality?" She said, "No, Father, I can't do that. You need the company of the seers for that." So there, in a tantric story, it shows you this highest Vedic realization, I should say Vedantic realization, non-dual realization, that for that is a very rare and special thing. That Buddha had to sit under the Bodhi tree for 49 days, so forth and so on. It takes dying consciously to do that, before you leave the body. See? And it takes not caring whether the body, like Ramakrishna said, is a blown off leaf in a gale, and it just will never come back. You'll never come back again. You have to be willing to sit there and give yourself away. Everything that you call yourself, anyway. Which would be why you studied the 24 cosmic principles, and why you said to yourself, I'm not the 5 elements, now I'm not the 5 senses, I'm not the 5 subtle senses, I'm not the 5 tanmatras, I'm not the fourfold mind, I'm not even the cosmic mind. So you went right up the ladder, you marched in the 24 cosmic principles, and you said, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this. See? Neti Neti, it's called. There's the double helix of Maya again, right, spinning in another form for us. But before I launch into that, let's see what sadhana proceeds to. You attain the path and guru. He gives you initial practices to do. Then worship and study, taken together as one. Isn't that what we're talking about? Upasana Jnana and Tattva Gyan. Then meditation. We hear the first mention of that word in any of these cycles. See, now I must learn to meditate, and that's where I'm going to get both vision of the deities within me and formless reality will dawn on me. The light of consciousness. I will become a hailstone and I'll fall into an ocean. But I won't fall into this ocean anymore, the ocean of rebirth and death and ignorance. I'll fall into the ocean of my true nature. Probably shut that off, people are getting cold. That fan. Out of meditation comes direct perception. That's the one thing Sri Ramakrishna mentions in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, which is a must-read for everyone interested in spirituality in this day and age. It says, what you want is direct spiritual experience, anubhava. You can hear the truth, and you can roll it over in your head, but then you're going to have to practice and realize the truth based on what you've heard and what you've practiced. That's going to take sadhana. So those people who step up and not just speak the Dharma, but actually get themselves a practice, a daily practice, they're going to come to know, because they will cut time down and they will cut space out of the equation in meditation, and they will see the formless reality as the underlying substratum of everything, falling back behind name and form. Name and form covers formless reality by its very nature, so I must strip it away to see my true nature. That I haven't stripped it away means I'm believing myself to be the body. I am the 5 elements. See? But then you should say, I am not the 5 elements to yourself, if you want to escape that misconception. Because here in the West, in contemporary times at least, we could say our upbringing, our religion, our science, our medicine, our psychology, Freud and Jung, it's all been based on the material cause, hasn't it? Food produces the sperm is given into the egg, the fetus is created by those two, fetus becomes a baby grows into a body, the body grows, the brain develops, and intelligence comes, we hope, to that brain. See? And when intelligence comes to that brain, maybe it'll start thinking, actually I'm not really a brain at all. I'm a mind. And then a great distinction has been made. See, between a physical organ that dies and decays, and the kingdoms of heaven within you, which are your mind. Your mind creating all sorts of creatures of your own fancy, angels, celestials, gods and goddesses, human beings, ancestors, in tears. T-I-E-R-S, but yes, it can break you into T-E-A-R-S of suffering. Those kinds of tears too. But I think I'll sit under a tree for a while and put them all to rest. Put them back in the chest of drawers where they came from, called the cosmic mind. So maybe I'm not a mind, maybe I'm a cosmic mind. If I have the cosmic mind, I can stuff everything back there. Probably want to iron it and fold it first, you see. So if I want to take it out again, and there's going to be an age of the dinosaurs, or Elvis is going to come again, or whatever horrors visit the earth, then basically, I'll take it out again and it'll be nicely ironed, you see. And I can use it again. So, as you go up this neti-neti process, if you do a sadhana, Vedanta would be talking about that, neti-neti. But you might say, all along the way, Tantra is talking about iti-iti. It's an interesting thing to contemplate. Basically, Tantra and Vedanta agree that you're going to arrive at a supreme place. Tantra just wants to overturn every rock and stone inside the great mind and look behind in every nook and cranny and uncover every shadow, shine light in every shadow. And Vedanta wants to cut here and get it over with, basically. I mean, that's a generalization, but it's fairly true. There are beings that just look at this and go, it's illusion. Thank you very much. I'm done with it. And there are those that say, I'm going to get in here and play with this. It's called Leela. Leela is divine play, and that's a tantric concept. The Advaitas don't like it. Why would God want to play with himself? I won't go there. So this divine play is beautiful and it attracts lots of souls, but it has to be a kind of soul that is saying all this. See, your baby comes, one kind of soul is going to say, beautiful, beautiful. Another kind of soul is going to go, God, what can I do to get this soul free? One's a teacher, and the other one's a realized soul that is celebrating life, you see. Of course, those are two very beautiful scenarios. There are plenty of other scenarios, like parents who are ignorant and even evil. But you really don't need to worry about that. He said, Sri Krishna, that souls are born to souls of like mind. The tamasic are born to the tamasic, the rajasic to the rajasic, and the sattvic to the sattvic. If you have a lot of running of your wheels to do, a lot of work, and you're still trying to prove something, then you'll be born in rajasic wombs, he says. And if you're lazy and slothful and worthless, and you're born in tamasic wombs, you're attracted to those same wombs. Crack babies will be born to crack mothers and fathers, you see. Because they came back to get the stuff. They died before with an addiction, they're just coming back with that same addiction, that same desire. I mean, this is what desire is all about. It's the linchpin of Maya. Every religion says so. Every prophet says so. You're looking at all the scriptures of the different religious traditions of the world, you'll find that word desire. Met a lady the other day called Trishna. What mother would name her child Trishna? Thirst, desire. Not a very well chosen name, I thought. I asked Holy Mother, she asked us actually, what should you pray for? And they all told her different things. She said, no, what you should pray for is nirvasana, freedom from desire. Vasanas are desires. Nir means to extinction. It's like nirvana. So the further you can go in alleviating your desires, and there are actually superior ways of doing it in ways that won't work, then the better for you. It's not like you can't stay in the world and even enjoy things. That's not what they're saying. The monks will go one way, and the ascetics and the renunciates will go one way, more non-dual, and other souls will be taking a more tantric path. So the idea is to be born in a body free of ignorance. So it means in your previous life you would have died consciously. You have to have your first conscious death. That's a way of putting it. Have your first conscious death. Probably what will aid that is sadhana. See? To practice in this lifetime so you're not caught off guard when you have to drop your body. You've already practiced dying on your cushion. That's what the Zen Buddhists are having you do. You go to Zazen, and at one point in your sitting of days, the Roshi will call you there and say, "Have you died on your cushion yet? I saw you squirming a lot, in pain, lost in some, vague projection world that you were in, but did you die yet?" And that's what they want to know, if you've experienced the loss of your ego, which is the most subtle of all coverings. It's one of the things eventually you're going to have to go beyond. I'm not the ego, the mind, its thoughts, or the intellect. You're going to have to give that up. The ego is the I maker, the separate I maker. And it's the culprit. It's along for the ride. And if it gets unripe, then it's havoc, causes havoc. But the ripe ego is harmless, it's like a child, as Ramakrishna used to say. Ripe ego is childlike. Not childish, childlike, there's a difference. So with this divine perception, you come full circle and you get off all cycles, you get to formless transcendence. Call it Advaita, call it moksha, call it mukti, call it kaivalya, call it beatific vision, call it nirvana, call it satori, call it fana in the Muslim tradition, whatever name that you want to assign to it, it's been had by thousands of beings, and you can have it too. In fact, it's your true nature. That's what they're talking about when they talk about your Atman, or your soul with a capital S, a soul that doesn't transmigrate anymore, doesn't dream anymore, doesn't play anymore, unless it plays in full consciousness. They asked Vivekananda, after he brought these teachings to us in 1893 in the West, should a man be reborn? Because they'd all heard him talking in these various ways, particularly the Vedantic way. He was a monk, he was a sannyasin, a superlative sannyasin, unrivaled sannyasin. And they asked him, should a man be reborn? And he said, I certainly hope he will not till he can do so in full consciousness. So there you have an ideal to strive for, to reach for. So, as I say, you would have to have died a conscious death. And in order to die a conscious death, you would have had to have practiced some sadhana in this lifetime, so that you can sit like this for hours, so that you can stop your breathing process willingly, because that's going to happen to you at death anyway. And if you haven't done it consciously, then aren't you going to panic? And aren't you going to then go unconscious, like you do when you're suffocating? So why not stop the prana and the breath? That is the breathing that's caused by the prana. Why not control the prana now? Sit. Isn't it basic yoga? Asana, pranayama. Then after that you get to pratyahara. I find that when I get still like that, there's no problem to draw my mind back from the objects. Pratyahara. It's the stumbling block in yoga for everyone here in modern times. They all want to become great hatha yogis or have mystic powers by controlling the prana. All that's nonsense. It's lower, it's occult power stuff. Krishna said, you do not want that, because you will not get enlightenment if you have even one of the occult powers. It's right there in the Gita by the great archetypical soul. So what you want is control. Yoga is all about control. You control the body, you control the senses, you control the prana, you control the mind. Better for you if you had to control the mind first, and all of that would have fallen into abeyance, because that's how you see Buddha come out of the womb and Christ come out of the womb and so forth. They already are past masters. So anything that they're doing in front of you is for your benefit, as a show, as an exemplar. Don't call me a savior, and don't tell me I've come here to bring peace, because I have not come here to bring peace. I'm quoting Christ. I've come here to bring a sword. And with the sword I'll separate father from son, mother from daughter. Is that a teaching you hear very often in church nowadays? Isn't it more like the bumper sticker on the back of the car? Do not mess with family. I'll mess with family, thank you very much, because one's a worldly person and one's an advocate for spirituality. One's a candidate for higher enlightenment. I've got to separate them. The wheat from the chaff. They want to go for the world? Go for the world. I can't strew pearls in front of you. But you follow me. Give up everything and follow me. So that's some very direct teaching for you. Christ was a sannyasin. Christ was a holy person. Christ was an ascetic. Christ was a renunciate. And there are certain Christians who realized it, and those are the ones that got the boot from the church. Like Meister Eckhart. There's some very non-dual Christians out there who were having a hard time convincing others that I and my Father are one, should be followed by be thee perfect, as thy Father in heaven is perfect, not by you're a sinner. What happened there, you see? Stop. What nonsense. What untenable assumptions they've manufactured in the name of conventional religion. So you want to get off that. You want to get higher than that. You know the truth. It's in there. Just, like out of that chest of drawers. Just pull it out and brush it off. Polish it up. Set it there as your icon, as your ideal, as your exemplar, and get free. That's the whole purpose for it, right there. You can do it in many ways, through the Tantra, through the Vedanta, through yoga, through the Iti path or Neti path, you can do it. But it must be done. And then live a life of divinity. You have basically, I'd say, 3 choices. You can live a worldly life and reborn again and again. You can live a dharmic life and be born with dharmic parents. That's your bottom line, so that you'll get taught this until you will be able to live that 3rd kind of life, a divine life. And there's a 4th kind of life too. It's called no life at all. Is that a poor unfortunate wretch? He has no life. No, we're talking about the Buddha, we're talking about the Christ, you see. Or call it eternal life. But it is the summum bonum of all spiritual practice, the highest ideal. And they can even do it inside the body. That's a marvelous soul who can come into the body free and remain free his whole life, his or her whole life. So there are ideals out there for you in all these paths, and they agree about the highest ideals. They just don't always agree about the proceedings. Vivekananda clarified that for us when he came here. He said, there are 4 types of human beings, and there are four types of practices. The 4 types of human being are studious, devotional, active, and contemplative. And those go with Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Raja Yoga. That is, the studious are going to go for the Jnana Yoga, the active are going to go for Karma Yoga, and the contemplative are going to go for Raja Yoga, meditation yoga, and the devotional are going to go for Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of worship and rites and rituals and singing and dancing and chanting. So find your temperament, hook it up to that path, and then embark. That's Dharma. And practice. Gain a practice, that's sadhana. So pretty much gone through this. About desires, we could say that linchpin that's causing people to come back into the body, or once becoming nirvasana, getting free of all desires, being free and going into the higher realms of non-birth, non-rebirth in physical worlds, could say this: the 3 that are Inferior are the enjoying of desires. One cannot truly enjoy what does not exist. And what gets taken away from others in the process. This is very Buddhist. I will not enjoy that because it'll be taken away from someone else. So they're into renouncing happiness, food, whatever it is, pleasure. It's better just to not have than to have. I feel very good without anything, thank you. And I'll just take a little bit here and a little bit there just to keep my body alive, sustenance and so forth. Keep my mind, my life and mind together so that I can study, so I can meditate, so I can get free. So enjoying desire is not possible. You can't enjoy what doesn't exist. Satiation never comes. And that's the next one here. Satisfying desire and satiating desire. Lord Vashishta says, satisfaction of desires cannot be had through the worlds of name and form unless one has taken refuge in the Dharma. So here's a qualifier for you. If you reach that dharmic wheel, then you can say, my desires are getting fulfilled. But nowhere below can you say, my desires are getting filled. You're just pouring gasoline on a fire to try and put it out. You're adding more thread on the spool of your mind, more karma. And so that karma repercusses. So that's why sometimes you're happy and sometimes you're sad. Sometimes you're balanced, sometimes you're restless. You haven't gotten control of the process yet. And that's also why people whose karma comes back to them quick are more spiritually advanced than those who's come back over a long period of time. Vivekananda told us that. Mostly people who are more spiritually advanced, their karma happens to them right away. So they don't store it up. They work it out. That day, that week, that year. God's sakes, at least that lifetime, you see. Work it out. Get free. Make sure you don't take any baggage with you upon departing. Have a conscious life and a conscious death. Now, about satiating desires, my teacher said, Swami Sheshananda, satiation never comes. The infinite cannot be realized through the finite. He was a cut-to-the-chase kind of person. The infinite cannot be realized through the finite. The further you go towards God, the further away you have to move from the world. It's not a popular concept, but it's true by the report of every seer who's ever gone into samadhi that the world disappears. There's no senses, for one thing, to behold a world in samadhi. You've slowly, gradually given them all up. So what is it that you're seeing when you neti, when you not this, you get rid of every shade and shadow and level of covering that's lying over your true self, and thy eye becomes single and you know the truth. Or Krishna says your jnana chakshu opens, your eye of wisdom opens. That sixth chakra. What is it that you see there? Your true nature, your Atman, your Buddha nature, whatever you want to call it. But it is seen as being the only reality. If you have known the Atman to be the only reality, then what is it that you're seeking here? And why are you vexing yourself? See, if you've known the Atman, true nature, to be your true reality, then why are you seeking anywhere else? Why aren't you just coming to rest there? And being content, you see. Then you get true happiness, your desires get fulfilled and so forth. People then begin to fulfill their desires in superior modes. They can fulfill through Dharma, as we just said. They can fulfill through self-effort, as long as it avoids repression. The Western psychologists have red lights go off when you say, when you talk about self-effort and renunciation. They think, oh, that's repression. But there's a difference between renunciation and repression. You're giving up unreal things, that's hardly repression. You're controlling your anger, you're not repressing it. And if you control your anger, it tends to lose its intensity over time. Vent it is only a temporary solution. And to repress it, of course, is going to backfire on you, but to take it inside and control it, that's different. That's yogic. So resisting desire through self-effort is different than repression. Then destroying desires at the root via tapas and austerity. Don't try this at home, kids. See, this is how few strong souls can do this. Here's something that everyone likes, though: surrendering their desires or sublimating their desires. That's tantric. I'll show you at the break, maybe after the break, which is just in a couple minutes here, that a chart on sacrifice, surrendering. It's very tantric. It's also Vedic, but definitely sublimating desire is a tantric tactic. Basically, if you have lust after God. If you have anger, be angry others haven't realized God, or have realized God and you haven't. See? Be jealous of those who have realized God if you have jealousy. That's tantric. That's sublimation. You take the negative and you point it in a positive direction. You use the power in negativity to vault yourself towards higher understanding. That's tantric, purely tantric. The Vedantists you don't usually hear them giving that teaching. Like, you just cut it out. Cut it out. So, various acts of sacrifice or removing poison from passion and using that power and passion, that's called surrendering desires and sublimating desires. There's also a samvedana, which is recommended by Lord Vashishta in his yoga. Basically, it means non-receptivity to desire. Desire comes looking for you, but it can't find you. They say you become so transparent in that practice that kama, karma, and yama go looking for you. These are three gods. Kama is the god of desire. Yama is the god of death. Karma is the god of cause and effect. Those three gods go looking for a person who practiced asamvedana, but they couldn't find him. He'd become transparent, you see. So that's a very special way of, it's called transcending desire, but the word transcendence in English doesn't really cut it. Samvedana, non-receptivity to any form of desire. It goes looking for you, it just passes through you and you remain the same. Very beautiful. So those are some 9 ways of dealing with desire, and also the wheels that associate or correlate with those levels, as they work or not, depending on your practice and your sincerity. So here we must pause for a break. The live stream audience can see these 2 charts while we are offline, and then we'll come back in 10 or 15 minutes for another hour of teaching. Thank you for being present. Namaste. We have returned together here at the SRV Association Ashram in Honoka'a, Hawaii, on the Big Island, for the second half of our class, which has taken a decidedly tantric turn. We had teachings over the last 4 classes that were decidedly Vedantic too, 4 jewels and 6 treasures, and some of the teachings of Advaita and so forth. But we've been talking a lot about the Tantra. It's less known in the West, although it's rather evident that, at least when you have it defined for you, that it has to do with forms and names, and everyone's very conversant with forms and names. Not everyone's that adept with forms and names, but they're all conversant with it, meaning they've had enough experience in the body and with the bodies of their ancestors, babies coming and old people dying, that they're pretty much living in a tantric realm then, and they usually take tantric solutions as their methods to try and get free. And they reach a certain amount of proficiency in that, or success, based upon the intensity that they can muster. That's why we ended up in the chart that we were looking at before, talking about sadhana, is that key word in Vedanta, spiritual practice. It's a defining and cutting edge between a person who only just knows some of the teachings, or frequents satsangs, or frequents kirtan, singing, chanting, and so forth, and a person who actually practices and would come there, to use a word in Hawaii, akamai, more in the know about what spirituality really means and what it consists of. Say, wearing a t-shirt that has Om on it. That's kind of popular to do. But the difference between a young man wearing that t-shirt and myself wearing it would be vast, because I've studied Om inside and out, upside down, sideways, every other way, philosophically, religiously, tantrically, vedantically, and through my mantra, which starts with Om, that my teacher gave me. So I've looked into it. I've put out CDs about all the teachings I could find on the word and how it's practiced in our traditions. So that's sort of an example I'm using, is if you're just wearing Om on your T-shirt, and then you sort of as a sort of show, and people come and say, "What's that?" and you say Om, and that's all you know, then you're not really akamai about the deep implications of what it means, how deeply spiritual it goes. And even in Christendom, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. You could then, isn't that 3 statements? The Word was with God, the Word was God, and in the beginning was the Word. So you have a triputi there. Triputi's triple teachings abound in our tradition. And so in the beginning was the Word, talking about origins. And then the Word was with God. The Word was with God is talking about this, how the difference between nada, shabda Brahman, bindu, and all of this, and the transcendent reality, how God and His Word are different. Because God cannot, in this tradition, give rise to creation. God does not create things. So right away, if you're raised in Judeo-Christian kind of idea, at least the conventional idea of it, they have deeper teachings in those traditions too. And all of a sudden you go, well, that's an odd idea. I thought God was creating everything. But then they say, no, the mind is creating that. And it can be the great mind of God, because God also has a mind. He's not His mind, just like you're not your mind, but He still has one. And there's a collective mind, and then there's an individual mind, your own mind, and all of those 3 levels are another triple teaching. And you can plug into the collective mind if you have practiced meditation, and you can also have darshan, or how would you say, communion in English, with the cosmic mind too. That's the Trinity, basically. Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva is the cosmic mind. So the Word was with God means there's a distinction there between God and the Word. The Word is doing the creating. That's the origin of things, in the beginning. But this sacrosanct principle that you're calling God, or we call Brahman in Vedanta, or they call Paramashiva in Tantra, or Satchidananda, or other words that's given to that. In English we could just say ultimate reality, or pure conscious awareness, or something like that, or timeless, deathless awareness, Buddha nature, if you want. That is held apart from the word in that rendering to show that it never changes and that it doesn't give rise to any creation process. It's the source of everything, but there needs to be a striking of the bell, and that's called the unstruck sound, the word. It emanates everything constantly, all the time, and it's at a level of existence which is beyond birth and death. Not just your birth and death, but the birth and death of the gods and goddesses and all their worlds. The birth and death of the Trinity, the coming and going over billions and billions of years of the cycle from Brahma to Vishnu to Shiva, when Shiva brings it all to a close, called pralaya, or dissolution of all form. The word stands above all that and always exists. It's always humming. So some beings know how to dissolve back into it, see? And they know that everything that is getting dissolved, which we call life and death and birth, is actually a misnomer. And what's really just happening is projection, sustenance, and withdrawal. And it's all happening by the power of the word. When you understand that, then the word was with God. So in the beginning was the word was with God. Then the word was God, or is God at that point. So in that level, you see a statement like out of the Christ is very beautiful and very deeply philosophical. It also probably should steer you to the fact that Christ did not mean to have his religion based on origins. He wanted his religion based on I and my Father are one, what we call Advaita. I and my Father are one is the same as saying I am Brahman in Vedanta. Aham Brahmasmi, this self is Brahman, Prajnanam Brahman. So the same things were said, and this Christ was, 5,000-10,000 years later than the so-called origins of these great divine statements that the ancient rishis were proposing. So you could see them saying the same thing from age to age, basically, from Krishna to Christ, to Buddha to Christ, because Buddha was 550 years prior to Christ, and then Christ, and then Shankara and Chaitanya. A march of, say, 500, 600, 700 years between each of these great lights. That's a long time for the human mind to think about. That's four or five rebirths for you, if you follow that idea. 400 or 500 years, 600 years, you can have a good half dozen births in that time. So what are you going to remember from age to age? That's a small age too. 500 years, on the other hand, is not very long, is it? In looking back in history, or looking back in the Big Bang, or looking back to the timeless word, Om. So with that as some consideration, when we look at the tantric scheme of things, they have a very nice turn of phrase. It's a good Irish, English kind of expression. It's a turn of phrase, you see. Basically, the turn of phrase is Shrishti Rahasya. It's the secret of all creation. So they named it well. And of course, when they say creation, they don't mean something out of nothing. That's not sensible to think that you can get something out of nothing, that all of this has come out of nothing. Even if you believe in the Big Bang, then who was it that caused the Big Bang? Or what was it that caused the Big Bang? If you're so prone as to attribute everything just to energy, then, what about the energy of your thought? Or what about the energy of cutting down your thought in meditation, where thought goes away, or your deep sleep state where you're not thinking? What about all that, the absence of thought? Can you call it a void when somebody comes back and remembers that they were in a void? So you should probably avoid the void as a philosophy. It's not sound. There's a looker, an onlooker over the void. He named it, he saw it, he experienced it, and he's still here. And he will always be here. So that seer, that great seer with a capital S, has Om written on his hand. You know, see Krishna or Ram or any of the great deities will have that sign of Om written on the hand. It means this is the last form you will see. I am the last form you will encounter in your meditation. You go beyond me, you go into the Word or into Brahman. Very subtle distinction between those two when the Word was with God, but then it's going to be that the Word is God, and you will then get to the Father through the Son, won't you? That's what it all means, basically. Vedanta, Tantra explain it so nicely. So if you want to see the scheme of the secret of creation, or the secret of projectionism, we might call it, you could see that it all starts out Nishkala Shiva. Kala means time. Shiva is the god of the three phases of time, and he's transcendent of time. He knows past, present, and future of all things because he's gotten out of the river of time, just like Buddha did, and saw everything pass. That was one of Buddha's greatest teachings, was everything passes, everything changes. All things must pass. And that was because he got out on the river banks, out of time in his meditation under the bo tree and saw everything cycling. When he got out, he wasn't in a void. He was in his Buddha nature, so vast difference. He came back to tell us about it. Some souls can come out of nirvana to tell what it was like there. Yes, there's a great light. The soul is there. It's the great soul. It's indivisible. It's eternal. I couldn't see the end of it. It was living. It was sentient. With a capital S. Hundreds and thousands really have said that. But many, many times that have not seen it, you see. Many souls have not seen it, still in doubt about it, or oblivious to it. But if you were at this transcendent level, they would be called Nishkala Shiva. And here's Parama Shiva, same thing, emanation of consciousness. Just like light comes off of a sun, there is this light coming off of that consciousness through the Word. And that ocean of consciousness is called Chit Jyoti. Chit Jyoti, the ocean of conscious light. They sing about it in so many beautiful stotrams, for instance. They would sing. Nimitam manas chakshuradi pravrito nirasta kilo padirakasha kalpaha ravir lokachesta nimbita tadayaha sa nicha palabdis swarupahamatma. So, Swarupaha Atma means, Atman is that word for Vedanta for the indivisible soul. Not the individual soul, the indivisible soul. We make a sharp distinction between the two. And Swarupa means your essence. So I am the essence of that consciousness. I am that one supreme soul. It says, basically he's talking about light, the ocean of light. He says that light is far beyond the terrestrial light. That light gives the sun its power to shine. That's what he's saying in this beautiful verse. And that inner radiance, I am. I am that light. There can be no other light than me. So again, 3 steps, isn't it, towards that realization, without any doubt. And he says, further in that verse, he says, that light also is what lights up the corridors of the mind and senses. Isn't it beautifully put? Because weren't we talking in the beginning tantrically about nadis? Those are the corridors running through the precious human form in the form of physical nerves and vessels, blood vessels carrying energy and blood and so forth to the organs. Inside of those are a subtle body with hundreds and thousands of subtle nerves that are carrying prana and energy and souls to other realms. The chakras, chakra system, you see. So he says that light am I, and that light is what lights up the suns in the sky. All the suns get their light from that, and also lights up the corridors of my mind and my senses. And that light am I. In one verse of some 13 verses, called Hasta Amalaka Stotram, it means fruit in the palm of your hand. Somebody wrote probably Apalaka wrote that. He's one of Shankara's disciples, and he says, just like you put a fruit in the palm of your hand and see it, just like that, I see the truth. The truth is that clear to me, all times. No doubts, no misgivings, no masquerades, no pretenders to the throne. The truth is as clear to me as you would hold a fruit in the palm of your hand. That's basically the title of the whole thing. So that's the same light that the father of yoga would call Chit Jyoti. See? Or he would call it actually Jyotishmata. Yeah, he says it's one of the 7 ways in which the soul can practice realization. There's 7 ways in yoga which you can practice realization. One of them is the sorrowless ocean of light. Ashoka Jyotishmata. Ashoka means no grief. Shoka means grief. So Ashoka, it doesn't have no grief or unhappiness there in that ocean of light. So the father of yoga calls it that. They call it Chid Jyoti here. Chid means consciousness, pure consciousness. Jyoti is the word for light. Jyotira, Jyotira, they chant and sing and dance, see, about the light of consciousness. It's interesting that you worship the sun. If people worship the sun, then they dance around and sing. But none of them are saying, "Oh, sun, thank you," are they? They're just having fun in the sun. But if you see the sun of consciousness, you sing, it's all about that. It's not about you. It's about that. So they sing Jyoti, Jyoti, and they look up as if they're looking inside. And they're talking about the sun, this sun of ocean of consciousness, you see. So you can see how spirituality attracts you straight to God with no pretenders, as I was saying, no masquerades, no usurpers to the throne. See? And then worldliness attracts you straight to the world, the light of the worlds. So if you were to put that together and say that same light is what's causing my eyes to see, it's causing my ears to hear, it's causing my tongue to taste, it's causing my hands to feel, causing my ears to hear. So the 5 senses connected to the 5 elements, connected back inside me, along the corridors of light, which is being provided by this ocean of consciousness. That's all going to spill down pretty soon. This is T1, by the way. This is the first tantric chart I put together years ago. T1 sort of sounds like a vertebrate, doesn't it, in a spine. So this is like basically the spinal column of tantric spirituality. And you examine it bit by bit. If anything's out of line, you adjust it, you see. You crack it back into place like a good chiropractor. So from Chit Jyoti, the ocean of consciousness, Shiva and Shakti, the 2 who are one, are appearing. They were, as Nishkala Shiva and Parama Shiva, they were one. Brahman and Shakti are one, like fire in its heat, like milk in its whiteness, like water in its wetness. Brahman and Shakti are one. You have to start out with that. That's the non-dual stance. It's irrefutable. Nobody can deny it. And then from there, they appear as 2. These are the 2 who are one. They appear as 2. Shiva, Sakala Shiva, the essence of wisdom, and Mahashakti, the divine will and its power. And this is how Tantra would explain it, where I said that many other philosophies would not deign to try and explain it, but Tantra does. It says basically there's this word called vichikirsha. It's the will to create. Call it, maybe in English, the closest thing we have is demiurge, or something like that, if you understand that. In a more philosophical way, like Greek and Roman philosophy. So in Tantra, the idea here would be there is a desire to create. It's a divine desire. And the whole thing is going to, without spending a lot of time trying to explain the inexplicable, I'll just say that take it for granted, and what comes out of it, their love, that is their love vibration, Tantra says, is this subtle bindu. That's why we sang earlier, Bindu nada kalatita tasmai Shri Gurave namaha. You're beyond the subtle seed, you're beyond the sound, the divine sound, and you're beyond the web of time. Bindu, Nada, Kalatita, we sang in the first half, in the Guru Stotram. So you can see all those words here, Bindu, Nada, and they call it Bija here. So when these two, this inchut love sound of Om or love vibration is there, subtle Bindu forms. You know the Bindu, if you've seen the Hindu women place a dot on their eye, it usually means they're married and so forth, but it has a deeper significance, meaning third eye region. And it's Bindu as a Sanskrit word. They even call them bindis and so forth, but as a Sanskrit word, the deeper implications of it philosophically is that you're a Shakta, you're a Divine Mother worshipper, and that Bindu is very key to the Tantric philosophy. It represents the third eye, and it represents where everything is going to spill down into creation, sort of trickle down into all this creation. Look what's coming. You've got formless wisdom, you've got the cause of name and form itself, nada, and you've got bijam. Bijam is what's in your mantra. So if you say Om Namah Shivaya, as we say, so you've got a seed in there, Namaha, or say Om is also a bijam. So you've got a seed that's a word of power that's put in your mantra to awaken consciousness. And if you chant it, like I said, not just like a parrot, along with Paul who wants a cracker, but you chant it with one pointed, then you're watering that seed, and that seed is going to grow into a huge tree inside of you, the tree of devotion. Like the Sufis say so beautifully, when I went to pick the fruit of spiritual practice off of the tree, I went to pick the fruit of spirituality off the branch of spiritual practice. I found that the whole tree was inside of me. So they're already thinking in a non-dual way, that I shouldn't be pursuing things outwardly. I should be affirming that all of this lies within me, that I am one with my Father, and all I need to do is access that. And the fact that I'm not accessing that is due to some root ignorance, some veil that's been drawn over my senses and my mind. Basically my mind, ignorance, avidya. And I need vidya to clear that up. Vedanta, that word. So if I apply that, it's going to become clear. So these three things, when the bindu, here's the tattvas in potential. We started out saying Jnana Tattva. Well, Tantra also has its tattvas. These are the wisdom principles and how they're explained. So when these two contemplate each other, this bindu, this egg is formed. It's called, in Vedanta that would be called Hiranyagarbha, the cosmic egg. Inside is all the potential for everything to happen. So when their love becomes so intense, this bursts. The bindu, subtle bindu bursts, and it forms into these three: wisdom, name and the possibility of name and form, and the potency of wisdom. Shiva and his potency, Shakti. So this is tantric couple, isn't it? The union of Shiva and Shakti is a very big teaching in Tantra. In fact, you have your consecrated partner, then you found your Shiva, or you found your Shakti, and you practice that in the form of love. And it's for the realization of the Shiva in the man and the Shakti in the woman, so they can worship each other. That's the whole purpose for the relationship. Look around you. What's the purpose of people's relationships here? Is it to worship each other? You're lucky if they even love each other with any kind of true love. So Tantra, the whole idea about relationship, comes from a divine place, and it is the crux of it all. The first relationship is Shiva and Shakti, and they're the exemplars. I said, not so much the savior idea, but the exemplars of how to live in the world of duality, because this is the first duality that happens. And where there's duality, there's problems. The difference between most people here in the world and Shiva and Shakti is that they're not fighting and arguing. They're loving and producing worlds, see. Worlds of name and form and time and space based on wisdom with potency in them. if you live with tantric couples, Ramakrishna said, or yogic couples, he said, they ask him, well, what happened to the old days, Master? And we see a few illumined seers, but we don't see any tantric and yogic couples anymore. And Ramakrishna said, oh no, they're around. They're a great blessing on society, but nobody recognizes them. So you talk about seers and saints and sages being hard to recognize. The divine tantric couples are even more behind the scenes. But they're gracing everything that's happening in society. If you have just one of them, divine couples, somewhere near, in any given place, then you've got somebody who's practicing or living, whether they're doing it as teachers or not, the tantric way. So, if it comes down to Shabda, then you've got Om, the primal vibration. So, the subtle word and the gross word, you might say that Om, they've divided into two levels here, and out of Om comes the real creation. That's where you could say up here it's just all the idea of projection and withdrawal. But if it gets down to the actual chanting of the word Om, you say O A, Om, A-U-M, A is creation, U is preservation, M is destruction or dissolution. So every time you chant that word, Dirga Pranava, they call it. You take a deep breath in and you just chant it, and you let it, and you close your lips at the end with M. Then you have enacted one cycle of creation. Your in-breath, your held breath, and your out-breath, your suspended breath and your out-breath have all been one lifetime or one cosmic creation. And if you look at that on the level of the Triputty or on the divine couple, that lasts, billions of years, that breath. That's a day of Brahman and a night of Brahman, a day of Brahma and a night of Brahma are hundreds and thousands of years long. Even the wink or blink of an eye of Brahma is many hundreds of years long. So the whole thing is expanded in that level. Now time is malleable. It's like deep sleep tonight, time goes away for you. When it reaches the level of the primal vibration, creation begins means what? Sound, touch, odor, taste, and smell. You've got the senses. And yes, later systems did expand on that and put things into terms of, see if I brought that. Put things in terms of, oops, that's no good. In terms of 5 wisdom senses, 5 active senses, 5 tanmatras, and 5 elements. But basically, Vyoma, Marut, Agni, Jala, and Prithvi are earth, air, fire, water, and ether. And then you've got these tanmatras, which are taste and form and feel, touch, that is. And then you've got the senses that go with them, which is basically procreation and elimination and that kind of thing. They're called the active senses. And then you've got the 5 subtle senses. Actually, they're called Gyanendriyas, senses of cognition would be a good word they use. Cognition means seeing, tasting, touching, hearing, smelling. So there is a primal energy that's... I'm going to have to put this back up.
You're off screen.
Huh?
You're off screen now.
But not off mic. It's all falling apart. because this chart doesn't have any lips. Okay. Now, after our commercial interlude, we're looking at, I was just saying that this is a very simplified version of the Shrishthahasya early on, but then you have these 20, and then 4, mind in its 4 forms, and then 12 on top that were added later. So over evolution, Tantra has developed the Shrishthahasya, which is the secret of creation, and expanded it later on in Shaivism to more of the cosmic principles, and then finally taken it to the level of spandhas, which are 12 vibratory spheres which are beyond the Purusha. That's beyond the soul. Purusha was called soul back. The soul was called Purusha back then. So to finish this out before we look at that, you can see here the 5 tanmatras, and ether, air, fire, water, and earth coming out of all of those. So this is basically the idea of how, in a nutshell, you might say, in what could be fit on an 8x11 to be expanded, how the secret of creation proceeds out of, basically out of this ocean of consciousness, but pretty much starting where most people think of it, at the word. But Tantra always looks for subtler verities to explain things. The 24 cosmic principles of Samkhya were a very good system, and everyone used it. The father of yoga used it very deeply for meditating on the alambanas. He called them alambanas. And Buddhism uses it, and Vedanta uses it. So the early idea of the 24 cosmic principles was well utilized in further philosophical settings. Now, Shaivism came along, probably at a much later date, and added to that, as I said, pretty soon you were looking at 20 principles plus the original 24 is here: mind, thought, intelligence, and ego. So these, from here on down, you're talking about 24 cosmic principles of Samkhya, which was very ancient. There's the meditator, meditating upon them and putting them together, because if you don't connect them, then you're not really a knower of tattvas. You can't really know the Jnana Tattva very well. You have to actually put them together. You know what I mean by that is basically that earth connects to smell, and that water connects to taste, and that fire connects to sight, and that air connects to touch, and that ether connects to sound. And you follow these right across, and you'll find out that then earth and smell connect to the sense of smelling, and then finally over to the subtle cognitive senses too. So you've got the act of smelling, and you've got the nose, and then you've got the power of smelling, and same for touch, taste, hearing. So this is just a quick mention of how all of these need to be connected together, and then you become a knower of the principles. This is your philosophy, your cosmology probably would be a better word. And now that you know this, you're a knower of the world. You're a knower of the A of Om, your waking state. Now you have to take this back into subtler levels and become the knower of the U of Om, and then become the knower of the M of Om, and then put them all together as 3 matras into one and get transcendence. So this is how the word has been taken apart in Tantra, as I was saying at the first half, and how Vedanta and Tantra share the mantra and share the idea of the word so much, but they each go in a little bit different direction with the teaching, which only enriches us, gives us more and more to think about, because the Tantrasists were basically, bhaktas and lovers. They were wisdom knowers too, but the accent was more upon this deep feeling that they had. And the Vedicists, and especially the Vedantists and the Buddhists, were more up here, in the cerebrum, and they were philosophically sound, and they were making sure everything was clarified. Later on, Vivekananda said, the bird needs 2 wings, and he was talking about bhakti and jnana. devotion and wisdom. And further he said, if bhakti comes to you without jnanam, then it turns to sentimentality over time. But if jnanam, wisdom, comes to you without bhakti, it turns sterile and callous and dry and lifeless. So the two of them have to be put together. So this is pretty much the premise of the whole series of 5 classes I've just given, ending today, is this idea of the two streams that have been going. And even India herself sometimes becomes guilty of forgetting this. Tantra became very degraded, for instance. Look how it became degraded here in the West. Basically it's about sexuality and intoxicants, right? And that's what they're labeling Tantra. But those are 2 practices of some 48, 50 practices in Tantra that you do, and you're supposed to have done those consciously too. Sexual relationships and taking any intoxicants, called the 5 M's, meat and alcohol and that kind of thing. Those were very guarded practice in the original Tantra. That had to be overseen by a teacher, and the reason to do them was for consciousness, was for realization. When Ramakrishna was presented with the 48 or 50 practices in Tantra, he did them all except those 2. He wouldn't engage in intoxicants and in sexual relation. So you could see by leaving those out the door, he was giving us a kind of warning for this time. Kind of key to this time is that there's going to be somebody coming at you and, corrupting the tantric teachings by belittling them, by just taking away the essence of them. So if you go back to the original Tantra and Shaivism that followed, and Shaktism too, because Shiva and Shakti were there in the first chart, this goes more towards the worship of Shiva, then you find these 24 cosmic principles are kind of sacrosanct, and you become a knower of where you are and what you consist of by studying this. There's no other system anywhere in any religion that puts together like this. It's not there. I mean, who says, oh, it's the beautiful nature and God created nature and all this, but they say, no, God didn't create nature. God doesn't create. Problem number 1, mistake number 1. God is not a creator. Creation spills out of the Word, and the Word happens at this level, and there's much beyond. If you say the Word was with God and the Word was God, well, how does the Word become God then? Then Tantra steps forward and says, oh, we can explain that to you. In our meditations, we found out that there are 12 higher spandhas. There are vibratory levels that go inside. And these are the kingdoms of heaven within you that transcend your ancestors and transcend even the realm of the devotees. You begin getting to these very high principles. They call them spandhas. Spandhas are vibratory spheres. 12 higher spandhas. There's a list of them, and here's from here to here, you'll see them outlined as these connections here, and you see how they connect one to another, so forth, and how they come out of Shakti, and how that comes out of the union of Shiva and Shakti. Staying with the chart on your right for a second, since we came down the Shrishthastra level down to earth, air, fire, water, and ether, let's go back up from earth, air, fire, and water, and ether to our senses and connect them all. Connect them to our mind, to our intelligence, to our ego, which is, as I said, plays a big part in it. And then begin to look at what happens when we transcend the Purusha, the individualized soul. The Purusha. In case you think this is all just sort of dry philosophy, when people have studied this, they have sung songs about it. One comes to mind here, which was one of the favorites of my teacher, Swami Sheshananda. Kakono Purusha, Kakono Prakriti, Kakono Shunya Rupa Re. Purusha is soul, Prakriti is nature. He says, sometimes I look at you, Mother, and you look like the soul. Other times I look at you and you look like nature. Kakono Prakriti, Kakono Purusha, Kakono Shunya Rupare. And then the man who sang this song and wrote it, Kamalakanta, sings Kamalakanta, O Baba Babi Sahaje Paga Hore Maki Maki Ama Kalore Shamu Maki Ama Kalore. So often I wonder, is my Divine Mother the soul, or is she nature? Is she black? Is she white? Is she red? You know, the various religions are calling them the green Tara and the white Tara and the red Tara, and she's coming in different forms. The colors usually mean something very profound. It's not just, you know, color like sparsha here down at the level of what the eyes can see, but it's what she colored gender-wise, what she colored subtly. What's she colored philosophically? What's her color? So that's what this song delves into, and it starts with that. Sometimes I wonder whether you're Purusha or whether you're Prakriti. So basically, Purusha starts the sentient process looking inwards, your true soul, and everything from Purusha down would be all Prakriti or nature. Nature in its unmanifested form, and nature also in its manifested form. That is, we discount the first, don't we? In the West, we don't know anything about unmanifested nature. We think it's a void, or we think of dark space or something. That's not what they're talking about. They're talking about the potential for everything to come out of something that you couldn't see, the Word. Everything that you can't see, it's spilled out of that. So all we're seeing is manifested Prakriti at the level of 5 elements. And if that's what you are, you're just a materialist, aren't you? You're just a materialist, that's all. And you don't know any of the other levels of cause and effect that march back into your soul, what Christ called the kingdoms of heaven. You're completely oblivious to them. And so in Tantra and in Vedanta, like I said, the Tattva Gyan side of it, they want you to know these things. They want you to become masters of them. You get a cosmology first, and that takes you to a philosophy, and then philosophy takes you to spirituality. That's good, better, and best. If you don't have a cosmology, and don't we know that by the races that are disappearing around the world? They're just being erased, right? So what happens to their culture? What happens to their cosmology? What happens to all the wisdom they learned through the thousands of years that race existed, and then all of a sudden it's wiped out? Well, the Vedantist, the Tantrist doesn't get all bent out of shape by that, because he knows that it's all going inside and it'll just come out again later. You can't destroy anything. You can destroy the clay cup, but you can never destroy the thought clay cup. Death can destroy your ancestor, your favorite grandmother, but you can never destroy your thought of your great-grandmother or your grandmother. That's eternal. So everything has come out of a thought. You know, West has it right in one respect. You know, the thought is father to the deed. The thought comes first, and then the deed comes after. So that's what these mind-only schools are based on. You have to realize what happens at the subtle levels, and you're involved in that. That's another thing. You've forgotten how involved you were with the production of your own worlds. As an individual, as a collective mass, and as a consciousness. That's what you forget when you die, and you're born again in ignorance of what you experienced before. We want to erase that trend, and we reverse it, and we want to remember our past lifetimes, and then from now on bring forth this wisdom with us every time we come into the body. Because that's how we're going to explain away the vagaries and the vicissitudes and the vicious nature of Maya and samsara that comes at us, trying to make us believe that death is real, trying to make us believe that evil is real. When Christ said, resist not evil, it's not real. You don't have to resist it. You give it more strength by resisting it. So they're coming at you with all these ideas, you see, and you come with this wisdom, armed with this wisdom, armed to the teeth, and then this ignorance and these misconceptions do not plague you anymore. And they don't plague your children because you teach them that, and then it won't plague your society because your society is made up of your children. And then your ancestors all of a sudden are wanting to transcend their station. That's why you purify 7 to 14 generations of your ancestors both ways when you get enlightenment. You can free your ancestors both ways. That is, in the past and in the future, by getting enlightenment in this lifetime right now. That's the teaching in India. So if you want to help your ancestors, there's your way. Get free in this lifetime, because you might have tried to talk with them, trying to get them free, but I don't think you had any luck. Get freedom first and be the exemplar, and then they will follow suit. They will see you free, truly happy, desireless, and able to meditate on reality. I mean, what would you think of a person that sits there for 49 days under a tree? Would all you would say at the end would say, boy, he can sure sit a long time. But don't you know what's going on inside of the Buddha's mind when he's transcending the realm of the ancestors? And when he's seeing everything that's within him, or when Christ says, all the kingdoms of heaven lie within me, or my Father's mansion has many chambers, don't you know that he's visiting each of these chambers and purifying them one by one, coming to know them, mastering them? So that, as Aurobindo said recently in the early 1900s, I can come up and down the amber stairs of birth and death at will now. Up and down the amber stairs of birth and death at will. Taking on a body at will, giving up at will. All in consciousness. You don't think that's based upon some very long-lived, even ancient, profound, and stabilizing cosmology that is set in stone for all time? So we salute Kapila, who did his homework, gave us the 24 cosmic principles. And then we have to salute the Shaivites and other great, the Tantrists and so forth, who added the tears, so we know that what the subtle worlds were like inside of us. We had some way of explaining what is inexplicable to people who live in a physical body and don't know. So what they found is basically, from the Purusha, the individual soul, there's the power of attraction, adhesion, attachment, and involvement, called raga. Raga is a cosmic pleasure. You know, at the level of Shiva and Shakti, raga would be very beautiful. She's very pure, their attachment and attraction for one another. This is where you could answer questions like, why does the mother love the baby so much, and why does the baby cling to the mother so much? So we just give it an overall phrase, say, oh, that's love. You see, or can we explain it deeper? Right down to the cosmic principle that's been ingrained in mother and child called raga, the power of attraction. Ramakrishna was at the Panahati festival, or one of these great festivals in India, and he began dancing and singing, caught up in a fervor, and a great light came off of him, thousands of people went running towards him, dancing around him. And he said, later on, what a bother that was. I found out what the power of attraction is. And then I prayed to Mother later that night and said, please take away the power of attraction from me. I don't want it. They wouldn't even let me attend the outhouse. He had climbed the walls and watching this great man, answer the calls of nature. So basically the power of attraction is, you'd think, oh, that's really great and everything. But that's what the stuff sensation is made of. That's the stuff phenomena is made of. Sensationalism, you see. So the seers usually are not attracted to that. They're really heading for something higher. Nonetheless, you can explain it here as the power of attraction between couples, between mother and child, even between a magnet and iron filings. So you're right on down to the very basic thing. The power of attraction is there in everything, and it can be explained as having its origin in a much higher realm, or spanda, much higher vibrational sphere. Niyati is cosmic laws and their natural order. Over here, better explained. We looked at them, some of them already, Bindu, Nada, and of course there's karma, and time, kala and kalas. There's niyati. So basically you can see how these connect up to the bindu, how some of these others connect up to, and that connects to the mother of action. These knowledge connects up to the mother of wisdom, and how raga and ishvara, that is power of attraction and the power of souls getting attracted to the ideal, connects up to the mother of will, Icha Shakti. So these are the three great Shaktis coming out of Parama Shakti and Parama Shiva. Beautiful songs about that too, that I might have sung a little bit for you. Jantra tumi jantri, ami gar tumi garani, ami rata tumi rati, jemi chalo temi chori, shakale tomari icha mai karma tumi karma loke bale kariyami shakale tomari icha shakti. O Mother, everything exists by thy own sweet will. Truly you are the self-willed one. Others, all work belongs to you, but others call it their own. You do all work too. See why? Because she's also Kriya Shakti, dynamism. And all wisdom belongs to you, others call it your own, because she's Jnana Shakti. This is the Divine Mother put into her Triputi, her essential Triputi of three forms. And he goes on to saying, O Mother, in your power as will, you caused the lame man to climb the highest mountain, yet you hurled a powerful elephant into the tar pits. Who can fathom your decisions, O Mother? You're inscrutable. All I can say, he says in Rajaran Chandra, this beautiful man who wrote this song, he says, all I can say is that I'm the house and you are the indweller. I am the chariot and you're the charioteer. I act as you act through me. I think as you think through me. It's this sentiment about Icha Shakti. So from that power of Shiva, that's inherent in Shiva, spills out all these spandhas, all these cosmic principles. Quickly, Niyati we had, Vidya, cognizance of awareness of differentiation, the presence of power, of wisdom, Vidya. So wisdom has a higher birth than just everyday wisdom or knowledge, doesn't it? It has a place, a vibrating sphere that you can go to. Call it Gyanakasha, the realm of the seers. That's where they dwell, in a realm of pure wisdom, of light of wisdom. You can't measure it by this world because this has dimension, right? This has width, height, breadth, depth. You don't have any of that in the soul. You just have the conception of width, height, breadth, and depth. There's no more atomic particles, so there's no more spatiality involved. You give up the atomic particle and you've got back to a particle so fine that it's made of light, it's made of wisdom, the wisdom particle, the jnana matra. And so you're not taking up space anymore. Do you take up space in your dream world tonight? That's the idea. You're in a world so fine that you don't take up any space as we think of space here, as far as the five elements, right? So you can see how far afield we've come to come down to the gross world, how far away from the source we've gravitated. to come amongst solid things. And now to think that solid things are the only reality, how far we've fallen in our thinking process too, to not know that these are based on subtler principles. So they want to school you in them. They want to school you in them, get you thinking in a different way, so that you walk out of your house in the day or out of this ashram today, and your eye has been made single, and you're seeing connections everywhere, and your life is connected, and you're beginning to live a dharmic life. You're off those two wheels, you see, of conventional religion and worldliness, and you're into the wheels of dharma and practice. You want to know more. You've been lit on fire. Atma Jnanagni Danena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. See, he has opened my inner eye of wisdom, Jnanagni, the fire of wisdom. Salutations to my guru. So that's what they want, and they say that, although you say that people can do it by other methods, these are pretty much common to all the darshanas of India. The 24 cosmic principles of Samkhya that Lord Kapila gave us, as far as they're concerned, he's the first man who did his real homework and put it in some sort of a systematized way so that we could understand what it is we're dealing with in the outer world, what is the next world that we're going to deal with in the subtle world, and the next world beyond that, when form starts to disappear, what are we going to deal with there? The A, U, M, and Om, the outer, the inner, and the transcendent. What's that all about? How can I master it and be free? And then move amongst it as easily. Put on bodies, take and slough them off as easy as a child outgrows old pairs of clothes. That kind of versatility. We want that. Kalas and Kala are phases of time and space, that's ages, yugas, manvantaras, and the concept of time itself are two very, very interesting but perplexing facets of divine reality that people ponder. The pondering of time by Einstein and Schopenhauer and other great Western thinkers gave rise to a lot of very beautiful thinking. But it's beyond the realm of thinking where you'll be led. You're going to transcend mind, right? In fact, you already have when you've gotten to the soul. You've already known that you're not the mind, that mind is the seat of all wise conception. That's why Buddha said, "Architect of the universe, I have finally seen you. Now I will not build any more houses anymore. I will not build houses of stone. I will not build houses of wood. I will not build houses of flesh and bone. And I won't build any houses of wise conception either." So he's talking about someone, he's not going to build any more mental homes. He's going to transcend all these mental homes, even the realm of wisdom and time. He's going to transcend them. And you see this line right here? That's where this vibration was happening. Tantra thinks in terms of Shrishti, Rahasya, vibration. The secret of creation is vibration. Science, quantum physics, has nothing on them. In fact, quantum physics is going outward with it. Because when you examine an object, you think you're going into the internal part of the object, but you're actually going into the external part. Science, as I said in the beginning, has clarified certain things for us in the outer universe, but they have no place to lay their head in the inner universe until they give up their death grasp on the atomic particle and start seeing vibrations that are consisting of much finer particles. If you get to this level, Maya, now you know what's perplexing you. Now you know what samsara and Maya is. The formless material of the worlds and its deluding power. That is, if you put Raga and Maya together, you've got a really fierce combination, see. Because not only do you see the material of the worlds, which is subtle, thought stuff, chitta, which really comes manifest over here in the mind. But you put it together with attraction to it, and you've got a deep hole. It's going to be very difficult to beat your way out of that. See? So these are beginning to become Shanti. See, these orders were impure, and this were to be renounced. See, Nivritti means to be renounced. So you should have renounced these things. You should be wary of these things. If you get here, you're starting to get more peace because you actually see Maya. So unlike beings who might get attracted to Maya, occultists and so forth, you will give it up, and you'll go on to the non-dual state of pure knowledge, which is higher than this awareness of differentiation. In usual knowledge, what you're finding is, oh, I see there's differences here, and that difference forms my knowledge, doesn't it? Well, now I know what that's made up of, see, because I know its parts. But here, you're not thinking in terms of parts. You're thinking in terms of the oneness that is holding it all together. The cohesive substratum is how Lord Coppola called it, the cohesive substratum. So, you're beginning to get more peace as you get into the pure order. This is Shuddha, and this is Shuddha. And you're getting up to Shanta Tita. So basically you're going to have to encounter the Lord of the worlds there. That's where God with his highest form comes in. Vishnu, Krishna, Ram, Christ, Buddha are all forms of Ishvara. They've come out of the non-dual Brahman through a form. Just think of a huge cloth made of consciousness, and take a cookie cutter. It's like a dough, and just cut the Christ form out, cut the Buddha form out, cut the Krishna form out. They're made of pure consciousness. They came down here and they took a body, knowing as they did. You read the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and you'll get a whole different twist on this, which is much the same, but in their own terminology. You can see how people came down and took on a body and how they'll give it up in the Tibetan Book of the Dead too, in the tantric way of speaking. You're talking about beings who came out of Ishvara and took on a form to teach the highest truth. Who else would teach the highest truth if they know all this? Will someone who doesn't know all this be able to teach you? So, the only thing higher than that, they say Sadashiva, the force, nada. That was back here in this rendering. See, it's the very cause of all name and form. So here, nada is here's the line of demarcation between the beginnings of inception of form. Form not meaning gross form here, form meaning very subtle form, like your thought clay cup, not the clay cup itself. And there's the line of demarcation where things begin to get formless. And there you get to ahamidam, famous tantric teaching. Aham, I am, and idam, this is. So that's Shiva and Shakti together. Shiva is the aham, Shakti is the idam. I am and this is. That is all-pervasive synthesis of consciousness, which is static, not moving, and the dynamic indwelling essence. If you want it simply, there's a snake, and sometimes it's still, and sometimes it wriggles across the floor. That's an example Ramakrishna used about aham and idam. There's the stationary Shiva, but inside is the dynamic power to move, you see, and that's Shakti. So they're both existing in the same principle. The snake in its power to move. And again, like fire in its power to burn. So if these are realized, the activation of the 6 Shakti powers, and there's where you see this system was content to give you 3, Icha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, and Kriya Shakti. Will, wisdom, and action. But here you see it's put in terms of 6. Existence itself, experience of existence, which is bliss. There's will, there's intelligence, and there's dynamism, but they also add production in there. The Divine Mother has the ability to produce worlds of name and form and time and space, all the way down to the 5 elements. But she does it by her knowledge of all of this. She presides over the entire sweep of things, not just from Om on down, but from Om on up to the 12 higher spandhas. You'll find her at the very hub of creation. That's why we call her the Great Mother, Mahashakti. India alone worships Mother. There's a little Catholicism, little Mother Mary worship here and there, a little bit of that. India, and of course it's related religions that came out of India that were influenced by India, like Tibet and so forth. They have the idea of worship of Divine Mother. And in India has the only scriptures written on Divine Mother. So you'll find out that Mother plays the supreme position, Shakti, Mahashakti, supreme divine energy, and that she manifests herself into these various facets, and then she will, from them, create all of these universes, subtle, causal, or should start with causal first, causal, then subtle, then gross. All comes trickling out in a great Shristi Rahasya, in a great secret of creation, the way the meditators have found it to be over thousands of years. Tantra is not listed as one of India's darshanas, orthodox darshanas, simply because it's too ancient and too vast and nobody ever systematized it. Thank God we had Father of Yoga come along and systematize yoga into an 8-limbed yoga, because otherwise you read the Gita and you've got 18 chapters and they're all named after a different yoga. So imagine how many yogas there are out there. So we had a systematizer come along and do that for us. Vedavyas came along at the time when the Vedas were about to be lost and the Upanishads were going extinct. He systematized those into the Vedanta. Tantra never had that happen to it. Too vast, too wide, too Catholic, and too spread out for anyone to come together and say, I will be the father of Tantra. Not going to happen. So you can see, though, inside of the sweep of its teachings, how much it has to offer us. And that's how I'm going to conclude my class, or this series of 5 classes today, on that tantric note, that we can bring back the worship of Shiva and Shakti amongst us, the householders. Because we're not monks, and very few of us in the West are even have that monastic leaning. Myself, I got interested in it and had monks who taught me and so forth, and who are even my compatriots now. But basically, there's a culture here called Western culture, and the way for us to proceed swiftly is through deifying each other, and deifying objects, and deifying food that we eat. That is, making it divine, right? We want to change it all into the divine, because that's what it is. We're just not seeing it. Right on down to the object, the chair, the rug. It's all Brahman. That's the final conclusion of the Vedanta. Vedanta Siddhanta Nirukti Reshas. I started chanting this morning, or this afternoon at the beginning of the class. So if it is all divine, then we better open this third eye and start to make it that. If you can do it Vedically, Vedantically, cut here to the chase, rise to the top quickly, more power to you. If you can't, there's a way to proceed gradually, step by step. It's called Tantra, and you will come to know yourself in full via that beautiful path in all its richness and variegation. So let's end here with a quick chant and move on to after announcements, after we say aloha to our live streaming audience. Om Bhadram, Om Bhadram Karnivihi Jinayama Devaha Bhadram Pasyema Akshabir Yajatraha Stirai Rangaish Tushtuvam Sastanuvir Vyashema Devahitam Yadayu. May we see with these eyes what is good and spiritual. May we hear with these ears what is noble and uplifting. And may we, while worshipping the Lord and Mother, Shiva and Shakti, with healthy minds and bodies, live a life which is beneficial to ourselves and to all other beings. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. And so we end with the divine word, Om.